With roll call, please.
Senator Cooper,
Here.
Senator Jones,
Excused.
Senator Nethercott,
Here.
Senator Rothfuss,
Here.
Chairman Anderson.
Here. We squeaked by a
Quorum.
quorum.
We got it.
We have a quorum, Sue?
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. The first bill to come before us today is Senate File 19, Impact Assistance Payments, Maximum Percentage and Review. And we do have a couple of Zoom members, but we're going to do the in-house first, the room first, then the Zoom. So is there anybody to present this bill? Wonderful, wonderful. Would you do that?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was interim work for the Minerals Committee. We had a working group that spent some time contemplating this legislation, and we worked with the Department of Environmental Quality and other stakeholders to kind of iron out some of the details. What the bill does, recall a few years ago, we created some strata of levels or percentages that were available depending on the size of industrial siting projects that were being located. And then we had some caps on them that were put in place. This is kind of a reflection on that and providing a mechanism so that the cap can be appealed to the SLIB board, the State Lands and Board, for consideration, along with recommendation by the Industrial Siting Commission. So on page 5, it discusses that while you have this 2.25% cap, it says for facilities with total estimated material costs exceeding $350 million, the council may increase the maximum allowable percentage to not more than 2 7/76 in accordance with subsection R of this section. And then that's basically where we're going next. So if you go over to page 8.
Senator Rothfuss,
Yep.
how's that different than what it says up there on line 6 and 7? May increase the maximum allowable percentage to not more. Are we saying the same thing?
Nope, it says, so for facilities with total estimated material costs of 350 or more, the council may increase the maximum allowable percentage to not more than 2.76 if the council includes in the specific findings required in this subsection that the maximum allowable percentage is insufficient to mitigate the identified impacts. And then this has the appeal process that's going to go in place for all of the above, for everything above it, and how that's going to work. So for every project above 350 at this point, if this legislation passes, we will go to this appeal process that's in R. So the mechanism for it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
can the senator explain that one more time?
Yep, so from 0 through 350 now, it is, I believe it's 2.76 is the maximum allowable. Let's double check
yes,
here.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay, so from 350 to 850, at this point, it would go to 2.25, but then this language was put in, either as an amendment or a little bit afterwards, that would allow the commission to increase it if it's insufficient.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Senator Nethercott.
why are there no Romanettes?
That's a good question. This is a long piece of legislation.
Where's the cowbell and where's the
Yeah,
Romanettes?
yeah.
We don't want no stinking Romanettes, that's why.
No Romanettes.
But for this, if we go to page 8, you'll see the R provision, which kind of calls out what the new allowance would be for industrial facilities for which the total estimated materials cost exceeds 350. The Industrial Siting Council may increase the maximum allowable percentage not more than 2.76% in accordance with the following. It's going to make some findings and recommendations, and then make that recommendation to SLIB And then SLIB is going to be allowed to increase up to that amount, not more than that amount, but up to that amount. So the SLIB board may take all of it. For example, if they say it's 2.5% is the right answer and they have justification for it, SLIB could approve 2.5%, could not go above that, but could alternatively say, all right, we'll do 2.4% based on the facts that were presented. And then that process isn't appealable. And then the last provision it basically says is that up until that point, distributions will be made at the typical 2.25% maximum, or whatever the maximum is for that value. So I'll pause there. That's the intent, is to provide an exception process. And
Okay,
I know we have the industrial siting folks here to talk us through more.
and that's the only changes that we put in there. Okay, we've heard the explanation. Is there any agencies that would like to talk about this bill? Senate File 19. And there is.
Good afternoon, Chairman Anderson and Senators. I'm Jenny Staben, the Administrator of Industrial Siting in the Department of Environmental Quality. And I'd like to today to first provide, if you would agree, sir, a little bit of a background on how the Industrial Siting Council, the procedure by which a permit is issued, because it is unique to other permitting procedures within the Department of Environmental Quality. And then after that, I would just like to do a brief overview of impact assistance, how it's calculated, what it is used for, and what this proposed bill, how it would change impact assistance. To begin, the industrial siting permit is unique in that it's not a permit actually issued by the Department of Environmental Quality. It is a permit that is issued by the Industrial Siting Council. The council itself is made up of 7 individuals appointed by our governor and confirmed by the Senate. So the permit itself, whether or not it's issued, conditions on that permit, the amount of money determined to be distributed for impact assistance is all determined by the council. The Industrial Siting Division itself, we are the administrative arm to that council. We also are charged with monitoring the permits, and we set up what I would describe as kind of like a traveling courthouse. The Industrial Siting Council holds a formal contested case hearing in determining the permit and the amount and schedule of impact assistance. Now, these contested case hearings are bifurcated. So the first half of a contested case hearing, the council typically hears from the permit applicant as well as the Industrial Siting Division for its recommendations. In this first half of the hearing, the council determines whether the project itself can be built in accordance with applicable law, whether or not it would cause serious injury to the environment, social or economic conditions of the inhabitants that would be impacted by the project or expected inhabitants. And it also has to make a determination that the project itself will not substantially impair the health, safety, or welfare of the inhabitants. Now, in those hearings, the division, we make recommendations for permit conditions. Our recommendations are based on the division's review of the permit application, as well as we take in comments from up to 19 state agencies where they can recommend permit conditions. Now, in that first half, that is when the Industrial Siting Council decides whether or not to grant the permit, and like I said, the permit conditions. The second half of the hearings are focused on impact assistance payments. Local governments appear before the council. They submit exhibits and what's called pre-filed testimony to the council. Now, in bringing up the pre-filed testimony, what that is whoever witnesses testimony or basically evidence that local governments plan to bring forth to the council, they file that before the actual hearing. This gives the council an opportunity, literally, typically about 10 days, to truly review the testimony that is planned to be shared at the hearing. Then at the hearing itself, the local governments come forward, make a statement of whether or not they want to change the evidence they've already submitted, and they stand for questions by the council. The reason for this is that the council, whether it's its decision-making in issuing the permit and its conditions, as well as impact assistance, they have to make a finding based on preponderance of the evidence or the evidence presented. This is also applies not only to the permit, as I've said, but as well as the impact assistance. Now, the purpose of impact assistance funds is to address impacts of these projects that are unmitigated by other means. In other words, the intent was that when you have these large-scale construction projects, they typically bring in a large construction force to a local community. And so the purpose of these funds was to make monies received from sales and use taxes associated with the projects available to cities, towns, and counties that are most affected by the project. Now, how impact is, Chairman Anderson, I apologize, sir, for going on. I would stand for questions at any point, sir.
Okay, all right.
Now, how impact assistance is calculated is the project itself must submit an estimated material cost. That would be the materials it plans to obtain to construct the project. The bill of sale for those materials has to be exchanged within the state of Wyoming so that the sales and use tax associated with those materials may be absorbed by the state. Currently, under Title 39, we have what I like to call a tiered system. That is, based on the estimated materials cost associated with the project, that determines the percentage of impact assistance, or in other words, the maximum amount of impact assistance available to be associated with that project. So at this time, if the estimated materials cost of a project is $350 million or less, the tier is 2.25%. If the estimated cost of a project is between $350 million and $850 million, then it changes to 2%. If the estimated cost of a project is $850 million or more, then 1.5% of that estimated materials cost is the maximum impact assistance amount available that may be made available to the local governments to offset the impact of these large construction projects coming into the community. Now, as written and as previously pointed out by Senator Rothfuss, right now, it is the smaller projects, the projects with an estimated material cost of about $350 million or less. Title 39 does allow for the council to increase that impact assistance from 2.25% to 2.76%. Now, the council would have to make a specific finding to justify that, and then a report would be provided to the JAC and the Minerals Committee. What this bill does is it expands that 2.76%. So then it wouldn't be just the smaller projects in which the council could raise the maximum amount of impact assistance available up to 2.75, but they would be able to do that for the projects that are over $350 million or those with a higher materials cost. So essentially, it just changes from an increase, the maximum of impact assistance available to not just be increased for the smaller projects, but that percentage could be increased for the larger projects as well.
Yep, question here.
Dr. Staben, can you remind me what the current lower threshold is or initial threshold for
Absolutely.
impact assistance? I can't remember.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Senator Rothfuss, Absolutely. Currently, if the estimated materials cost is 350 million or less, the maximum impact assistance percentage available is 2.25.
Yes, go ahead. Senator
My
Roth.
apologies, I mean, how much do you have to spend on a project before it qualifies for industrial siting? I know we have that number in statute, and then it's changed over time.
Chairman Anderson, Senator Rothfuss, I apologize. Right now, the jurisdiction for the Industrial Siting Council, the jurisdiction threshold is 271 million. However, sir, that number changes annually, and it typically changes anywhere from, it's my understanding, about 8,000 to 15,000, increasing every year.
I have a question on page 9. There's sounds like the board cannot get any more input on the permit, order, or decision, and if requested by the board, the record of the hearing, not accept or consider any new evidence in its consideration. The board just gets the proposal from the council and no other input is the way I read that.
Chairman Anderson, it would be the board would receive all of the information that was available to the council at the time they made their decision on the permit and the impact assistance. I believe the thought behind this is that it would be fair for SLIB to receive the same information that the council received and not additional information that would, if additional information were received, then it would only be fair for all parties to the permit to be able to provide their own information. And then that would start, instead of more of a appellate type of review, it would open up the permit to be reheard. And I don't believe that was the intent of this bill.
Okay,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's exactly right. We were worried about it turning into a new long process through SLIB instead of just a straight appeal.
okay, all right.
Mr.
We
Chairman,
really meant to do that.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay. Yes, Senator Northcott.
kind of on this topic, on page 10, line 18. Why would we eliminate judicial review of the final agency action of SLIB, let's say, is the final agency action in this case?
Chairman Anderson, Senator Nethercott, I believe the intent of this bill is just to allow SLIB review of a request to increased impact assistance. What is important, I believe, to note in this bill that between line 19 and 21, the review of the permit itself, the rights on the permit conditions, other issues related to that permit would still be reserved for appellate review.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that clarification. But that's not necessarily the money. I mean, I would think that a project would be very much concerned about those impact payments, as much as they'd be concerned about other requirements on them. But why could we allow them to go to judicial review for the requirements but not the payments, if they felt those were calculated improperly?
Chairman Anderson, Senator Nethercott, the way impact assistance are currently reviewed, the permit itself is tied closely to the impact assistance, even though it's a bifurcated hearing in two separate processes. Now, currently, a permit itself, including impact assistance, may only be appealed to district court by the parties themselves, not outside parties. I believe the intent of this is to cause a bit of separation between the permit itself and impact assistance, because impact assistance most greatly literally impacts the local governments. So in a way, what this bill does is it would allow for an appeal on the impact assistance without reopening the entire permit and the rights to the permit.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think I do understand, and I think it's wrong to deny judicial review for that purpose. I mean, I understand there's two trials as bifurcated. One is on liability and one is on damages. And you can appeal the liability portion of the trial and you can appeal the damages portion of the trial. And so if you do that, you're only appealing on a petition for review under Title 16 to the district court, the evidence before SLIB or the Industrial Siting Council determining the amount of those impact assistance payments. And I don't know why we would eliminate an applicant's ability to have a district court review that. It's not, it's just a simple appeal.
Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
So everything that industrial siting does would theoretically still be appealable. Just, hold on, let me go on for a second. No. And statute approves the 2.25, 2.0, and 1.5 regardless. So that payment even begins beforehand. While the industrial siting is making the recommendation for, let's say the recommendation came back for a $1 billion project, the recommendation was 2.5%. That too could actually be subject, as I understand it, based on how we structured this, to review. That could be appealed in court and they could say, well, we think it should be 2.76%. So everything prior to it coming to SLIB would be subject to judicial review exactly as it is in statute. The intent here is just a final political decision of, do we want to pay the extra money? And it's not a discrepancy of fact. It's not saying, well, this is right or this is wrong. It is pure politics. Pure, and if you don't like that idea, that's reasonable, but it's consistent. It's the idea of, this is the executive branch saying, yeah, we read the evidence and we're willing to kick more money in. Or we're not. It's not a finding of fact that they're wrong because it's pure politics. And that was effectively the appeal that was decided upon. And again, Senator, you don't have to like that, but that was the decision that was made. That was why it was made that way. Pure politics, not a rational process, not a fair process, not a, we calculated the number wrong. If they decide, if the recommendation is 2.5 and they say 2.37, politics has declared 2.37, the end. That was why.
Senator Northcott, I bet you have something to say about that.
I'm a little concerned about the future and the background of the Minerals Committee. That's how we're doing business in the state of Wyoming. It's pretty concerning that we're playing politics with billion-dollar projects and the costs associated with them. I certainly hope not.
Maybe that should be changed in this bill, I don't know. But anyway, do you want to go ahead, Jamie? Or have we confused the issue too much?
I'm prepared to walk through the bill if that would be of assistance. Or to stand for any other questions.
No, I don't want to walk through the bill. Is there any questions on the bill? Question on the bill for Jamie? I think you've answered them, Jamie. I think you've done it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other agencies like to come and talk about Senate File 19?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Jason Crowder, Interim Director for the Office of State Lands and Investments. I'm really just here to answer questions and learn. This has been a great conversation for me. We obviously serve as the administrative arm to the State Loan and Investment Board, and we provide all the materials and the agendas and oversee the meetings that they oversee all of their meetings. We also work very closely with DEQ and a variety of other loan and grant programs, and those are directly impactful to the cities, towns, and counties. And so I think that that's probably where we lend the most amount of benefit to this process. But after that, I'm not sure what else we can provide because the board can't consider anything more within the draft bill than what's already been provided to the Industrial Siting Council. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to sit in the back and learn more about this process. I'm also happy to answer any questions that you have.
Jason, do you think that we have the power to cut out the judicial review? Do you think we can do that?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a question far beyond my ability to answer.
Oh. Any other questions for Jason? Any other questions? Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you, Jason. You can go back to watching us. Anyone else in the room like to testify on this bill? On this good little bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. I do appreciate you taking up this legislation. It's something that we certainly support. I want to start off by just saying that I stand by the tiered system that we moved to that's reflected in the current statutes. As you've heard today, we put a relief valve in place for those smaller dollar projects. We didn't ever cross into putting a relief valve in place for the much larger projects. It was something that we advocated for a couple of years ago when this legislation came forward, but we couldn't find the precise entity that was appropriate to evaluate the rather large fiscal impact that could accrue to the state general fund by making some of those decisions. And so this legislation here really tries to put it in the hands of the State Loan and Investment Board as our statewide our 5 statewide elected officials to give their final say on whether it's appropriate to spend those dollars. Why is this important? Well, first off, we have to start with why is the Impact Assistance Program important? And it really is to help local governments address, and I want to emphasize this, the unmitigated impacts that occur as a result of these projects. So in other words, these are impacts that local governments have no resources to address save for this particular program. This is also important because we have industrial projects moving into places that they've never been seen before. Goshen County went through its first industrial siting process here in the last year. Niobrara County may see that, and it may be a $1 billion project, and they may not have the snow plows, emergency services, communication systems to address that. So being able to come to first the Industrial Siting Council and then ultimately the SLIB if necessary is important. So I would request your support for this legislation. I do have a commissioner online. Sweetwater County Commissioner Island Richards is available. He can give you more precise examples of a situation they're dealing with where this particular sort of legislation could be beneficial for them. He's online and ready, but Mr. Chairman, with that, I would stand for any questions that the committee might have.
I have one question. Do you know how many of these we've actually done in which price category? The 350 less and 350 and above?
Mr. Chairman, I used to have that sort of data available. I don't now, and I'd have to probably ask a friend in the back to help me with that.
Mr. Chairman, we had the complete list during the interim. We could probably just get that distributed again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of all of them.
Is it a big list?
Dr. Staven could probably tell us very quickly. I'm gonna say on the order of 20, but that's not gonna be the right number.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, most of the projects are not in that much larger tier, although we do have a couple of those examples. We have a Trona mine expanding right now, and it falls in, and that'll be part of the example you hear from our commissioner.
Any other questions for Jeremiah? Any other questions? Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else like to wade in?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt Hall with the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. It's a privilege for me to represent the great communities of our state of Wyoming, and help the legislature in educating the important issues that affect our citizens and empower local leaders to make decisions. With that said, we're supportive of Senate File 19, the Impact Assistance Payments Maximum Percentages and Review. We believe this will provide more flexibility for our communities to accommodate these massive changes that these generational projects have on our areas of the state. So really with that, I would ask for a favorable vote on Senate File 19 and stand for any questions.
And Mr. Hall, these impact assistance go to counties and cities? They both receive funds from the impact assistance?
Yes, sir, I believe that's correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Hall? Mr. Hall, you do know that the campaign of when you outlaw D9s, only outlaws will have D9s, was an impact assistance project. We had Kerr McGee up there, or A Coal Company, I should say, up there who did impact assistance for the city, and they left their dozer sitting in town, and the guy took it and ran around town with it. That was an impact assistance project.
He's part of the Monkey Wrench Gang.
Yeah, yeah.
Chairman.
Any other questions for Mr. Hall?
Chairman?
Any other questions? Oh, hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Oh, wait a minute.
No, it's not really a question, just a comment on your comment there. I believe that gentleman who was behind the wheel of the dozer that night, of the controls, was very guilty of doing something that many of us have thought seriously about. So,
Yeah, he had a lot of fun. He had a lot of fun that night. Anyone else to testify? Yes.
Chairman Anderson, this is Jenny Staben again, Administrator of Industrial Siting. Just to answer a couple of your questions, typically, more often than not, it is the smaller projects that receive that 2.76%. And typically, those are the majority of the industrial siting projects that we currently have pending construction or under construction. So that would be projects from about the last almost 10 years or so, do typically fall within that estimated material cost of $350 million or less. As far as where this type, and to explain how impact assistance works in such a way that once that dollar amount is determined, once construction of the project actually starts, this is important because that percentage is based on the material costs. It is not until the project actually starts construction that the local governments can receive impact assistance. Once that construction starts, the Department of Revenue releases funds to the counties, and then the counties distribute funds to municipalities, towns, and cities. So that is the flow of the impact assistance funds. An example of where this bill would be helpful would be in this past year. We had the Dry Creek Trona project. Initially in the spring, Project West was permitted. Its peak construction force is about 1,200 workers. Then this fall, we had the Dry Creek Trona project. Its peak of construction workers is about 4,200. In the Dry Creek case, the Industrial Siting Council awarded about 99% of the maximum amount of impact assistance available, citing an increase in the overall workforce since the two projects will occur close in time within Sweetwater County. And so that would be an example of maybe where an increase of 2.76% would have been helpful when there was an estimated materials cost of 850 million or more. I stand
So
for
the
any other questions.
2.76 is distributed to the county, and then the county distributes it to the cities depending on what they say their impact is?
Chairman Anderson, that is correct, sir. And then all of those local governments are required to report the funds they received and what those funds were in fact used for. They do that reporting back to the Industrial Siting Division.
Question?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Question? Yes. Senator Nethercott.
And so what authority do you have over that decision that they utilized with that money? Why do they report it back to you? What do you do with that information?
Chairman Anderson, Senator Nethercott, it's my understanding that it is a reporting system just to keep track of the funds.
So it could be just as arbitrary and capricious as the SLIB board's use of funds. Okay, that was rhetorical. You don't need to answer that. Quick question though, Mr. Chairman, if I can, to direct your attention to page 9, 16 through 19. I get you're not with ITC. So line 16 through 19, I'm just curious. So the SLIB board can approve or deny or modify. And they can modify the proposed percentage increase to any percentage between the maximum allowable percentage as specified under subsection C of this section. And so I'm trying to get my arms around that section, kind of the different tiers that are within it. And then it says, and 2 76/100%. And so if you know, some of these questions are unfair for you, but if you know, what is the maximum amount that they actually could in effect increase or modify the proposed percentage by?
Chairman Anderson, Senator Nethercott, I would think the best example I could put forward would be a project over 850 million. Let's make that 1.2 billion. And instead of 1.5% of instead of 1.5% of 1.2 billion, the maximum would be 2.76% of that 1.2 billion. And again, that dollar amount is, that dollar amount is sales and use taxes taken from the general fund and then distributed to local governments. It's not a dollar amount that the applicant pays for.
And that is determined by the SLIB board, not by the council?
Chairman Anderson, it's my understanding the council takes in all of the evidence to make their initial decision. Their decision would have to first be in accordance with one of those tiers. So if the project was a $1.2 billion project, the council would first have to find factual grounds that justify an impact assistance of 1.5% of that 1.2 billion. Then they would also have to make a specific finding that in this particular case, that 1.5% is not enough to address the unmitigated impacts of the project on the local governments. And then the council would have to then determine a percentage somewhere between 1.5% and 2.76%. That would be a dollar amount for the maximum impact assistance allowable in that instance, and have to cite facts as that would justify that increased percentage. Then that decision would go to the SLIB board for the SLIB board to decide that either no, the council's initial determination of 1.5%, the maximum under the tier, that is appropriate, or yes, going up to 2.76% is appropriate, or any percentage in between by which the council cited specific facts to justify it. And then based on the information provided to the council that is then forwarded to SLIB, then SLIB would have the opportunity to agree, disagree, or pick a different percentage between that tiered dollar amount up to 2.76%. That is my understanding of how it would work.
Does that answer your question, Senator Nethercott?
Yeah, just a piece of clarity for how this paragraph is interpreted. And I'm fixated on the word "and" on line 18. And I may be interpreting this incorrectly. But could it be possible that there are two combined percentages applied?
Chairman Anderson, Senator Nethercott, it's my understanding that the council would the initial award would be just for the tiered amount as it's currently stated under Title 39. Now, the council will initially order that, plus, in that same order, have a specific finding that additional monies would be appropriate. The percentage between the tiered amount and the 2.76. Now, as written, the SLIB's review would have to happen at their next regularly scheduled regularly scheduled meeting. If construction starts between the issuance of the council's order and the SLIB's meeting, then impact assistance would inevitably have to start before SLIB had its meeting or made its decision. So in that instance, the decision based on the tier percentage would go into effect pending the dollar amount or percentage, I should say, determined by SLIB. Then once SLIB makes the final decision to honor the current tiered amount or a percentage above that, then the payment would be adjusted through the Department of Revenue to reflect SLIB's final decision. So that may be an increase in payments, or it may not. But either way, it would still be that tiered percentage is where the decision and distribution would start.
Other questions? Other questions? Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
I did have one, or I guess two. One is, can you remind me the difference between 3915 and 3916 in statute, right? We basically do this twice, and I can't remember what the difference between them is.
Chairman Anderson, Senator Rothfuss, the only difference is 3915, I believe, is sales tax. 3916 is use tax.
Oh, it's the sales and use issue. There we go.
And
Thank you.
it's my
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, the other question, just because you asked it a minute ago, what has been our total number of industrial siting issuances since we started that program?
Chairman Anderson, Senator Rothfuss, since starting the industrial siting, or since the initiation of the Industrial Siting Act in the early 1970s, approximately, and I apologize, I'm adding up the ones I've done this year in my head, about 80 industrial siting permits have been issued.
80 permits. Thank
Wow,
you.
80.
Yes,
since-
Chairman Anderson.
Which year did you say? 70?
Chairman Anderson, Senator Rothfuss, I believe it was 72, 73,
Okay,
around
thank
in there.
That had to help a lot of cities and counties. That's for sure. Any other questions for the agency? Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Chairman Anderson. Thank you, Senators.
Anyone else like to speak on Senate File 19? Senate File 19.
With the commissioner online.
Yeah, we got two. Two online. Sue, should we bring in the online? We got the room taken care of. We'll take care of Zoom now. Who's first on this?
Mr. Chairman, it'll be Mr. Richards.
Mr. Richards, okay. Mr. Richards, you go ahead whenever you feel like it. Or not. We put you off from last Friday. You probably,
Okay, here I am.
oh, there you are.
I swear this system changes every time I log into it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Island Richards or Richards or whatever my name is today for Sweetwater County Commissioner. And I'm here to speak in favor of Senate File 19 and offer my strong support for the positive impact this bill could have for communities across the state that are facing large industrial projects and the unmitigated impacts they bring. In the last year, Sweetwater County has been involved in 3 large industrial siting projects and the Phase 2 impact funds applications that go along with those, with 2 of them centered in Sweetwater County. In Project West, the formula provided for roughly $25 million in funds to be split between 3 counties and their affected municipalities. In that project, the formula worked, and between all the communities, we only identified about $20 million in potential impacts. And with the MOU in place, we applied for only 80% of the available funds. However, on the Dry Creek project, while there is expected to be roughly triple the amount of workforce spread over twice the amount of time, could be argued that there will be about 6 times the labor impacts spread across the 3 counties and their communities. Because of how the tiered formulas work, though, paired with projects that have vastly different materials purchases compared to the actual impact they bring, there was only 40% more in funds made available to address the needs that will come along with the increased population. In Sweetwater County alone, with only $35 million available in total impact funds for Dry Creek, and using roughly the same formulas we used for Project West, we identified over 50 million in potential impacts. And that was with us diligently keeping those projections related only to healthcare, law enforcement, emergency response, roads, and utilities as the statute dictates. That was just Sweetwater County. With Uintah County and Lincoln County also seeing increased impacts from the same project, it was clear that the allowable funds wouldn't come close to addressing the community's needs as we try to absorb thousands of new people into our neighborhoods, along our roads, into our healthcare facilities, and to provide the additional emergency and law enforcement services that come along with them. Basically, Dry Creek project broke the tiered formula. The Kemmerer Power Station 1 project had a similar effect on the impact funds process. While I can't go into detail on the amounts that were made available there because of the non-disclosure agreements and a protective order, we saw a similar case of huge estimates in the numbers of laborers and their families coming into our communities across 6 years. Literally thousands of people are coming during the construction of this project. But an even smaller amount of impact funds was made available, which was simply inadequate to meet the projected needs of the communities. And we all had to agree to significant cuts from our projected impacts in order to reach an MOU agreement between the communities that stayed within the constraints of the application. Remember that industrial siting impact funds are an investment into our local communities to help us address unmitigated impacts that our local governments are facing. And we are prescribed by statute to only use those funds for specific types of expenses. In most cases, the tiered percentage system works, but we've already seen that it has fallen short in 2 out of the 3 projects we've had here in Sweetwater County in the last year. The changes proposed in SF-19 don't give us a magic wand that'll cure all the problems that we're seeing with the formulas, but it would have provided a safety valve and given an opportunity for the communities to present those larger identified impacts to the Industrial Siting Council and given them the chance to vet those applications and request a larger pool of funds be made available to meet the growing needs that the current system has just proven itself inadequate to meet. It also gives the state the opportunity to have another set of eyes look at it before the additional funds could be awarded. And to address Senator Nethercott's concern about judicial review, the industrial applicant has to pay the sales tax on the materials purchases regardless of how the impact funds are distributed. The Phase 2 discussion doesn't really affect that. And I believe the intent here was to keep the local governments from trying to appeal the SLIB's decision to the courts. that we would be bound by the SLIB's decision, not the applicant, because the applicant doesn't have skin at the game at that point because they're already paying the taxes. It becomes a discussion between the local governments and the state government on who gets that funds. I think that's all I have for you today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in front of you, and I'm happy to stand for any questions.
So, Mr. Richards, you think that part in there about not having a judicial review is okay then, huh?
I'm not a lawyer, and I probably don't understand the words that I'm reading on that bill as clearly as you do, but I believe the intent was to keep us as local communities from dragging on the process through a judicial review. We would just have to live with the SLIB board's decision.
Mr. Richards, in Sweetwater County, how do you account for all your various cities? You got some real small cities. Do they actually make application to you, or do you just take care of them, or how does that work?
Mr. Chairman, every city within the boundaries identified in the application has the opportunity to become a party to the application for funds. And once we're notified of the application, I believe we have 30 days. Dr. Staven could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but 30 days to create an MOU with all of those communities. And we all sit down in a room together and hash out who gets what percentage of the total application. And by going to the Industrial Siting Council with an MOU, it makes their job a lot easier, because then they're not trying to make those percentage distributions between the communities. They can focus on the individual applications.
Other questions for Mr. Richards? Other questions? Other questions? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Richards. We appreciate
Thank you.
you staying with us. Next up is Mike Thompson.
Chairman Anderson.
I am.
My name is Mike Thompson, Chief of Police for Evansville, Wyoming. Pretty hard to follow after Commissioner out of Sweetwater County. So I'll keep it brief. Evansville, we currently are receiving impact funds from two of several projects that I've been a party to. And speak in favor of the bill. These impact funds really help the smaller communities. Because we and of course, Evansville, Mills, Barnett, we sit next to Casper, and the funding, we struggle, your street maintenance and those things really impact our budgets greatly. So we appreciate these funds. The one thing about, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Earlier we had technical difficulties. Apologize, Mr. Anderson.
Oh, you're doing.
Anyway, so we greatly support this, and although I normally support judicial review, I will agree with the commissioner that in this sense, not having it would be a benefit, because for some reason, one county always likes to fight with the folks in Natrona County, and this would help avoid all the fighting back and forth and just let them get down to business. So with that, I'll keep it short. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Unfortunately, that's what judiciary is all about, is fighting. Any questions for Mr. Thompson?
You have no idea.
Any questions? Any questions for Mr. Thompson? Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for your testimony. Appreciate it. I hope you're not too cold up there today.
Well, we're staying warm as we can.
Good, good. That concludes the public testimony for this bill. I'll close public testimony, and committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Cooper,
Second.
seconded by Rothfuss. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Cooper, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a lot of concerns on page 10, lines 14 through 21, with the removal of judicial review and really any further review by the Siting Council. I think it's an extreme lack of transparency in the bill, and the removal of judicial review could even be questioned constitutionally. I believe, sir, that I'd like to to bring forward an amendment.
All right. What's your amendment? Senator Cooper.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, as my amendment, I'd like to strike lines 14 through 21 in their entirety.
Oh,
Page 10, lines 14 through 21.
14 through 21 on page 10. Is there a second? Do I hear a second? Do I hear a second? I'll second it for discussion purposes. Go ahead, Senator Cooper. Anything else you'd like to add about that?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. No, I'm thinking that a good discussion on this is probably necessary. The judicial review question is obviously out there. And I think that any committee, even if it's the SLIB board, should be subject to review by the
Council?
council or the parties involved. Thank you.
Other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Senator Northcott.
ask the sponsor if he'd consider this a friendly amendment, which is to simply strike the language in 18 and 19 of, or subject to any judicial review. And so it is final. In that way, the cities, towns, and counties, and the applicant knows. Because I know you don't think they have skin in the game, but they may have skin in the game in a way that you don't appreciate potentially. And so did the cities, towns, and counties, of course. But it is done with the Industrial Siting Council. It is done with SLIB, and it's final. And therefore, if someone thinks that the decision was arbitrary and capricious and not supported, as consistent with the rest of our law and the Constitution, that you can appeal that for judicial review. It's not that scary. It's not full litigation. It's just a simple review based on the evidence in the record at that point. I think that's prudent, and I think that protects all the parties. And it doesn't, it could potentially prolong, but it sounds like there's already a process in place pending for the collection of those impact payments. So I don't think that the harm is that significant. It would just be this portion of it. And I think it's prudent to do. So we're only striking or subject to any judicial review.
Would the maker consider that a friendly amendment?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
So the amendment now is just to strike on line 18 or subject to any judicial review on page 19. That's all. Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm perfectly comfortable with the proposed amendment. It needs to be mirrored on page 19, lines 8 and 9.
Lines what?
8 and 9 on
8 and
page
9,
19.
oh.
There needs a mirroring there, same language, same strike. And, Mr. Chairman, I do think that Senator Nethercott's exactly right, that the payment gets paid, the 2.25% or 1.5% is going to be paid regardless of this legal action. So if there is further legal action, it might delay the decision on the differential, but it wouldn't delay the decision on the beginning. So I don't think it would be detrimental from holding things up standpoint. And I agree with Senator Nethercott that, it'd probably be very limited in its potential use case. So I'm comfortable with that in both places.
Other discussion on the amendment? Other discussion? Other discussion? You have the amendment, Sue? You have it on page 19 and page 10?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. All in favor of that amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion sneaks by. That amendment.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Senator Cooper.
I'd kind of like to reflect on the comment made by Senator Nethercott on page 9, line 18, the word "and." As I read that as I read it, and you got to remember where I went to school, this says that it could be the maximum allowed percentage and 2.76%.
That's right.
And it should probably be or 2.76%.
What line are you on?
Line
18.
18.
Line 18?
Page 9.
Oh, excuse me, I'm on 10.
Mr. Chairman,
Excuse
We're
me.
fixing 80 on this.
Yeah, yeah.
if you're referring to a number between two numbers, you would say it is a number between 10 and 20. You would not say it's a number between 10 or 20. So this is the construct. You've got two numbers. So the maximum allowable percentage is the first number. That's number A. Number B is 2.76%. So you're saying modify the proposed percentage increase to any percentage between number A and number B. That's the construct. So that's the correct grammar.
We should clarify.
I don't know how we would clarify it. Well, I will say, as an alternative, when we're thinking about it, I did have a proposed amendment for that, and maybe it helps a little bit, not for that specific and clause, but the clause, when we drafted this, and I'm surprised to see this language go up to 2.76%. I could have sworn it was up to the recommendation of the commission. So I would want to change this 2 76/100% to the phrase, the proposed percentage increase, which is the phrase you see on the bottom of page 23, or excuse me, page 8, line 23. That's the recommendation of the council. There's no reason that the board should ever make a recommendation above that recommendation of the council. Those are the two bookends, the statutory required amount and the recommendation of the council. So getting back to the example that Senator Nethercutt asked about, you could imagine a circumstance where 1.5 is the statutory maximum. 1.6, which is a substantial number of dollars on a big project, is the recommendation of the council. The idea that the board could then say, I think it's 2.76, and I so move, spending $60 million in the blink of an eye. That was not what I remember drafting.
I think that's what it says.
It does. It does right now, exactly. So the language is plain there. That is not the intent. The intent, as I recollect when we were working on this bill in the working group, was that it would be between the statutory number and the recommendation of the council, which is referred to as the proposed percentage increase.
We still have the amendment by Senator Cooper to change and or. Are you saying you're changing that?
No.
You're leaving and in there.
Chairman?
The and is the
Yes,
right language.
Senator Cooper.
I'd withdraw my amendment for the moment.
Okay, all right.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would move to strike on line 18, going on to 19, 2 76/100% and the number, and insert the proposed percentage increase. If we wanted to be more explicit, it could be the percentage increase proposed by the council, if that's preferable language.
Not necessary when you look at the language
Yeah.
prior, but read it how you want it to read.
So it would read, modify the proposed percentage increase. I guess I can't use it there because of we're using it above. Modify the proposed percentage increase to any percentage between the maximum allowable percentage as specified under subsection C of this section. And my recommendation was the proposed percentage increase, but now upon reflection, we use that language right above. So it would need to be the recommendation of the council.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is conceptual. So see, modify the proposed percentage increase to any percentage between the maximum allowable percentage as specified under subsection C and no more than 2 76/100%. But
I think the
between,
maker was trying to eliminate 2.76.
Yeah, Madam,
yeah, but this is just conceptual.
I see what you're saying, that, let's see, between and not more than. I mean, if you're saying between, you need two numbers. And again, going back to how you would say it, you would say between 20 and 40. We use and when we say between. It's between two numbers. So if we just go algebraic, you've got clause 1, which is number 1, that's A.
Well, we're going by lawyers reading this.
Yeah. Well, lawyers should follow mathematics also,
We do
which is
not.
why it's important that we all take math.
And typically means in addition to,
Correct.
That would require logic.
not parens, y plus x, parens.
We don't have any parens, so we got that taken care of too.
I don't think I know your,
There's no way we can use an or here and not wreck language. But there's two issues. One is, how do we structure the sentence such that it's actually between two numbers? And the other issue is, what is the upper limit number?
Correct.
The upper limit number needs to be the recommendation of the council, not 2.76%, because we don't want to give SLIB a blank checkbook, a blank check to do this with. They need to be bound by statute and the recommendation of the council. We could say the recommendation of the council.
that's assuming that the recommendation of the council is higher than what
They
what the
wouldn't
SLIB
come.
is looking at.
They wouldn't come if the recommendation of the council wasn't higher than the statute. This doesn't happen at that point. It only happens if the recommendation of the council is greater than the statute. So approve the proposed percentage increase. Deny the proposed percentage increase. So we've got a proposed percentage increase that's given. What we want here is anything between statute and the proposed percentage increase.
Of the council.
Yeah, as provided by the council. We can also honestly just take this conceptual amendment and then work with Mr. Fuller and get it to do the things that we want it to do by the end of it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think we can do that with the two different numbers. However, I think we need more discussion on 2.76 versus the recommendation of the council.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make that conceptual motion then, that we want, I move to change it from 2.76% to the recommendation of the council as the upper limit.
Okay? Okay, that's your amendment? And we replaced 2 and 76% with the recommendation of the council.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that just for further discussion.
Any feedback? It's fun to watch us
It's
struggle.
quiet out there.
Glad you're not on the bus with us.
No further discussion on that amendment. We'll put that amendment through, and Senator Rothfuss will get with council and see if there's a better way to put that in, right?
Yeah,
Did we vote on
we got to vote on it.
Huh?
Did we vote on that amendment?
We didn't.
No, we didn't yet.
Okay.
We did not yet.
Yeah.
But that's what's gonna happen. We're gonna vote on it, and he's gonna still get with the council,
Okay. Gotcha.
our council, to see if there's a better way to say it. All right, everybody in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That amendment passes, but you still have to work on it.
Yep.
Okay. All right, any other amendments to this sweet little bill? Any other amendments to this bill?
Oh,
We do have a
Mr. Chairman?
fiscal note but they don't know what it is,
Mr. Chairman?
but we do. Yes,
My apologies, I should note, and should have included in the motion, that we have to make the same change on page 18, lines 7 and 8 also, so I would move to make that
I
change.
thought you said that.
I don't think I did on that one, I said it on the previous one.
Yeah, I
My
know.
apologies, yeah.
What, 18 what? Line what?
Lines 7 and 8,
7 and 8.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
so I move that too.
All right. All in favor of that motion? On
Aye.
page 18, line 7 and 8?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, that motion, that amendment carries. Anything else on this sweet little bill? Senate File 19, we darn near used up all of our time on one little bill. All right, we'll have a roll call vote on Senate File 19. Please, Sue.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate File 19. Senator Cooper?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I have a absentee vote of aye for Senator Jones.
Yes.
Senator Nethercutt?
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss? Chairman Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes.
Senate File 19 has snuck by the Minerals Committee one more time. That concludes our business for the day. Everyone have a happy inauguration day. Liberation.